All right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashim, YAHAWASHI, Bahashim, Rachakwadash. Double honors to the elder apostles, the elder bishops, the elders of Great Millstone, who rule very well, very beautifully. Double salutations be unto the Akim, out here pushing his gospel and truth and his sincerity to the best of their ability, given to them by Yahweh, Bahashim, YAHAWASHI. Peace, blessings, and salutations be unto the elect scattered abroad. May the election of Yahweh, Bahashim, YAHAWASHI, Lord willing, fall upon your houses. This is Brother Quanawath come back at you, Lord will, with the edifying lesson through spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashim, YAHAWASHI, Lord will. It is edifying, Lord will. It is straight to the point. And in this lesson, I was really meditating, on, something that, the brother Shamar, out here, in camp, man. It was actually a few weeks ago. Actually, I want to say like two or 3 weeks ago, a Sunday camp, the brother Shamar, made a beautiful statement, which again, I've been meditating on, this whole time, that as we continue to see these different signs, happening more and more frequently in the earth, right? Again, you had the pink moon, on the Passover, right? Before then, we had a blood moon. Today, there was an earthquake here in Arizona, 2.7, kind of light, but still, right? You're having pestilences, earthquakes in diverse places, uproars of the people, right? You have this ceasefire that they were trying to enact, but that quickly was, dissipated because we're in the time of war and not of peace. All these different signs we're seeing, right? Letting us know that we are at the end, right? And again, they're happening more and more frequently, right? Yahweh Shemel Shai is turning things up, right? So as we, see things turning things up, hey, well, guess what? The hell that we go through, right, on the daily, right? That's going to be turned up as well, so we're going to be going through it, a lot more, as we continue to, go against the grain of this world, which, following in the grain of the world of this world means you're ultimately walking on that broad and wide path, right? But see, through the spirit and power, Yahweh Shemel Shah, we're walking against the grain, right? We're walking, on that straight and narrow path, and again, that's going to ultimately lead to, us going through more, right? Because as the scriptures say, right, that he that departeth from evil maketh himself a prey, right? So as we continue to depart from evil and continue to purge ourselves, right, of that old man, right? Because we're coming into the, the end of the feast of unleavened bread, where in this time, we, remove any kind of leaven, right, out of our homes, right? On a physical level, but on a spiritual level, where we try to, remove as much as we can any kind of leaven within ourselves, right? We look inwardly, we examine ourselves and remove all that leaven, again, we can, try to do that to the best of our ability, as much as we can. But again, we're coming to the end of it, man, and that is ultimately making it to where, we're painting basically a target, on our backs, for Satan and these, these demons and whatnot, to come after us, man, because we're not following in the ways of the world. We're not following after wickedness and folly and bullshit, So spiritually, it's painting, again, a target on our back, man. So we're going to be going through more hell, as the days go on, as things continue to, to get worse, and I was just meditating on that, and a thought came to, my mind, right, through the spirit, that in these times, as we, continue to, suffer and things continue to, the hell continues to increase, right? In those sufferings, in those afflictions, right? In those trials, right? We are to lean upon Yahweh Shai more, right? Because ultimately Yahweh Shai, he went through the worst of it, man, which we're going to grab it. But he said, right? Be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world, right? Letting us know, right? That it can be done, and that with Yahweh Shai, we can overcome the world as well, man. So I'm going to start right here. This is Acts 14, verse 22. It says, confirming the souls of the disciples and exhorting them to continue in the faith, and that we must, through much tribulation, enter into the kingdom of the Most High, right? So, we're ultimately, right, Apostle Paul also said in 1 Thessalonians 3:3, right, that we are appointed unto sufferings, man, right? That we're gonna be going through it. Why? Because St. John 15, verse 20. Matter of fact, let's grab that real quick, right? YAHAWASHI went through it first, right? St. John chapter 15 and verse 20 being the point. It says, remember the word. This is the words of YAHAWASHI, right? It says, remember the word that I said unto you. The servant is not greater than his Lord. If they have persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they have kept my saying, they will keep yours also. So, hey, YAHAWASHI went through the worst of it, man. Right? Scriptures say that he was marred more than any man. YAHAWASHI went through the worst of the worst sufferings, right? YAHAWASHI, the scriptures talk about, YAHAWASHI was constantly in agony, right? He was constantly in agony. Well, let me grab that, right? It says, in being in agony, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was, as it were, great drops of blood falling down to the ground, right? Let's go into that word agony, right? Remember the brother ultimately showed me this is heavy, right? Agonia, right? Strong's G74, agonia. That's talking about YAHAWASHI. It says a struggle for victory, right? It says of severe mental struggles and emotions, agony, anguish, right? So YAHAWASHI was going through it, So you best believe we're going to be going through it too, man. It's going to get harder. It's going to get tougher. Right, but in these times, we should lean upon YAHAWASHI even more. Right? Let me grab this and Habakkuk, this Hebrews, the second chapter. Right, and this whole chapter is fire. Right, it's just speaking about YAHAWASHI, being that high priest. Right, he is, after the order of Melchizedek. Right, he is the high priest now. Right, and made it to where, the nation of Israel. Right? All the tribes, right, could be made priests. Right? Because ultimately, in the beginning, it was what? The tribe of Levi were the only one that can be priests. While YAHAWASHI came out of the tribe of Judah. So this whole chapter is fire, speaking about YAHAWASHI. But let me get to the point. This is Hebrews 2 and verse 17 in the KJV. It says, wherefore in all things it behooved him to be made like unto his brethren, right? Because YAHAWASHI came in the flesh. Right? Scriptures talk about the word was made flesh, and YAHAWASHI, right, came in the volume of the book, right? It says that he might be a merciful and faithful high priest in things pertaining to the Most High, to make reconciliation for the sins of the people, right? YAHAWASHI was that go-between, right? The ultimate sacrifice, right? Hence the reason why, we ultimately, remember and think upon and meditate upon YAHAWASHI during the Passover, right? During the Day of Atonement, right? Really all throughout the year, right? Because really it's through YAHAWASHI we're able to receive, this grace, right? This mercy, this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. It's through YAHAWASHI, right? There's no other way. YAHAWASHI is the way, right? The life and the truth, man. So again, as we continue to, on this path, right, walking against the grain of this world, we got to continue to lean upon YAHAWASHI. It's like you walking in like rapids, low rapids, right? You're walking against the tide in it, and it's about to push you, and you got to grab that staff, right, that reed, and kind of jab it in the ground and kind of use it to, kind of help guide you and get you across, man, right? So that water doesn't, push you and take you away. YAHAWASHI is likened unto that staff. He's likened unto that reed, So YAHAWASHI is very important, right? And verse 18, it says, for in that he himself hath suffered being tempted, right? YAHAWASHI went through the worst, again, the worst of it. You read in Matthew, the 4th chapter, he was tempted, by Satan himself, right? It says he is able to succor them that are tempted, right? So let me read this in the NLT, right? It says, therefore, it was necessary for him to be made in every respect like us, his brothers and sisters, so that he could be our merciful and faithful high priest before the Most High. Then he could offer a sacrifice that would take away the sins of the people, his own life. YAHAWASHI gave up his own life, man. Right? YAHAWASHI is that Passover, man. You know? He is that lamb that is to be, sacrificed, on the Passover, man. It says verse 18, since he himself has gone through suffering and testing, he is able to help us when we are being tested, man. We can't do it ourselves, man. We need YAHAWASHI, right? He is the author and finisher of our faith, man. Matter of fact, let's jump to that in Hebrews 12th chapter. It says, and it's beautiful, right? It says YAHAWASHI, the example, right? He's the ultimate example, man. It says, KJV, it says, wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which does so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us. Right. So continue to cast off that old man, continue to, to examine yourself, continue to, purge yourself of that leaven, but understand that in doing so, right, you paint, a spiritual target on your back, which means, hey, you're going to be dealing with a lot of shit, which is all part of, when you come into the truth, you count the cost, it's one of the first precepts I heard when I first came in, back in 2018. You got to count the cost, right? You got to sit here and sit down and really, hey, this is what we're gonna go through. This is what we're gonna deal with. This is what you're gonna lose. You're gonna gain. You're gonna you go through all those different things, man. And you see through the spirit, man, whether whether you're if it's for you or not. Really, ultimately, it's up to you. How about Shemel Shah? The elect are going to do it no matter what, whether their fleshy mind, ultimately tells them, no, you can't, you can't do it, or, so on and so forth. The elect are going to be, they're made for it, but see, again, it's through YAHAWASHI, how, we're going to get through at the end, or make it through to the end, but verse 2, it says, looking unto YAHAWASHI, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, right? Endured the affliction, endured the persecution, endured the sufferings, the tribulations, right? And we are ultimately coming in that same stead. We have the joy, the kingdom, right? The everlasting rest set before us, right? We can see it afar off, if you will, and we desire a better country. We desire the kingdom, right? Rather than what we see here, man. It says, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of the Most High. So he made it, right? YAHAWASHI, ultimately, he was the first one, right, to get the victory, man. YAHAWASHI was the first one to get the victory. And YAHAWASHI, what did he say? I have overcome the world. Right? Boom. This is St. John chapter 16 and verse 31. It says, YAHAWASHI answered them, do you now believe? Behold, the hour cometh, yea, is now come, that ye shall be scattered, every man to his own, and shall leave me alone, and yet I am not alone, because the Father is with me. Right. And even now, right, we're not alone either. Even, again, right, we have the brotherhood and, whatnot, the brothers, and, we can call one another, rely on each other when we, cars broke down, we can call a brother to pick us up, but, that's very few and far between for the most part, right? When we go back into the world, we're with ourselves, man. We only got ourselves. But see, even then, that's not the case, right? Because we have Yahweh Shemel Shai, Yahweh, Yahweh, and Yahweh. So we're not alone ever, right? Verse 33, it says, these things I have spoken unto you, that in me ye might have peace. In the world ye shall have tribulation, right? We're going through it, and we're going to continue to go through it, and it's only going to continue to get worse. But see, through YAHAWASHI, we have that peace, right? We know what's coming, right? We know that YAHAWASHI has got our back, and we know that YAHAWASHI, he finished, as he says right here, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world, right? YAHAWASHI was the first one to do it, and through YAHAWASHI, we're going to do it as well, So continue to lean upon YAHAWASHI, especially in these times, man. We need YAHAWASHI, the author and finisher of our faith, man, the champion, right? The captain and champion of our faith, man, But that's all I got, man. I just wanted to touch on that. I was meditating on that, basically all day, really last couple weeks, man, but Lord will is edifying, Lord will is exhorting, Lord will straight to the point. I want to give all praise, honor, glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, YAHAWASHI, Bahashim, Rachak, Wadash, double honor to the elder apostles, the elder bishops, the elders, great millstones. Next time I say shalom.